Felony tour is about to begin. Follow me to the mausoleum.
This is really dramatic.
Don't be shy, come on up. All right, show of hands. Who's been on one of these tours before? Welcome back. And I'm assuming the rest of you, this is your first time? Yeah, welcome. So we will be walking through Oakwood Cemetery here, and we'll be hearing some stories of our residents that live here now. Or maybe they don't live here. They rest here. Okay, so our very first resident here that I'd like to talk to you about is named Marion Norton. Now, Marion Norton died of an accidental overdose of arsenic. Is anyone familiar with arsenic? Yeah, so arsenic is kind of interesting. It's one of those poisons that's not real easy to detect. It's kind of looks like the symptoms are more like stomach flu or, something like that. And it's even harder to detect if you have been poisoned by it because it doesn't have any flavor, it doesn't have any smell. So it's very easy to overdose on arsenic. And you might be thinking, well, who's drinking arsenic? Well, back in the 1900s and early or late 1800s, they used to mix arsenic in elixirs and different types of things to cure ailments, right? So, occasionally if you had a epilepsy, they thought this might cure it. Arsenic was also in all the wallpaper. It was in children's toys. It was everywhere. So it's very, very easy and not, we're not exactly sure why or how she got an overdose of arsenic, but she did die of arsenic, and she's out here in the field, right? So follow me. Let's go hear from some ghosts. Come closer if you dare. Hear a story.
My name is Dr. Frederick Bruno, and I'd like to tell you a very, very strange case indeed. My life is a fictional construct dreamed up by the imagination of Dr. Ferdinand Eugene Daniel, resting right here behind us. He told my tale in his 1906 science fiction melodrama novel, The Strange Case of Dr. Bruno, which drew much from his life, his experiences, his medical career, his fears, and his demons. I was born Frederick von Seti. I was adopted by my uncle, Baron Frederick von Bruno, and was thenceforth known as Frederick von Bruno Jr. I found myself in love to one Miss Katie Cardell, and I asked for her hand in marriage. We immediately set out to get her father's blessing, but when we told him of our engagement, something had changed. He begged us not to marry. Well, Katie and I, we thought he had gone mad, so we eloped, and we were then married in the parlor of our hotel. The next morning, after we had consummated our vows, her father tracked us down to the hotel and told us the awful truth that he had recently learned. You see, Katie had been adopted. Her real name was Katie von Seti. She was none other than my long-lost sister. Well, I learned all of this in one instant. My head began to spin and I blacked out. I awoke and was informed that an entire year had passed since that day that I fainted. When I awoke, I looked for Katie, only to learn that she and her father had passed in that previous year. Well, I could take this torment no longer. But that year-long fugue state, it had introduced deep, dark secrets and thoughts into my mind for me to pursue in my grief and in my madness. What if a man, under the influence of some chemical component, could enter into a state of hibernation, a state of suspended animation? Could that man sleep away decades of pain with no food, no water, only awaking in specific intervals, thus extending his lifespan indefinitely? Destitutes, criminals, the convicted, they all became the subjects of my experiment over the next several years. Inhumane, you may say, but I no longer cared about the morals of men. Science was the thing that kept my heart beating, and I would pursue it at all costs. One night I retired to my room and decided to put my macabre experiment into motion. I measured out a specific amount of my synthesized venom and injected it forthwith into my body, after which I drifted off into a deep and dreamless slumber. My story became known to a 20-year-old nurse named Katie Dunbar, who had been born to a wretched woman named Katie Cardell. That daughter, my daughter, she knew the real name of her father, and upon reading about it in the newspaper, came to find me and meet me exactly 6 months after the beginning of my experiment. My experiment had been a success, you see, and I began to awaken. As my eyes adjusted to the light, at the foot of my bed, I saw her. But no, it couldn't be, for she was dead, but there she was at the foot of my bed, my beloved Katie. I arose, arms outstretched. Katie, Katie, my beloved. And then in that instant, my heart ceased, and I fell down dead. Had I known that the Katie at the foot of my bed was not my long-lost love, but was actually the daughter I didn't even know I had, would I have perished in that instant? Perhaps. Perhaps not. It's a very strange case indeed.
All right, let's move on. That narrative was based on. It's actually here in the cemetery. You can take a look at it. It's by Edgar Daniels, and it's called Dr. Bruno. And it's a very old book. It's beautiful. You should go check it out on your way out. All right, let's take a quick little pause here. If you guys look out, I don't know if you see, there's like a little light shining on a gravestone out there. I wanted to read a little news article about the person that's buried out there. And that's the Austin alderman, Thomas Markley, who was murdered by Joseph Knoll. So here's from the Lampasas Dispatch, back in March 21st, 1878. Alderman Markley of Austin was killed last week by Alderman Knolley on account of angry feelings caused by the proposition to build a new market house that was going to cost $10,000. They first had a quarrel in the statesman's office, in which Nolly threw an inkstand and a pair of shears at Markley, and soon afterwards they met on the street out on Congress, and they had a big old quarrel. And Markley asked Nolly if he thought he was as good a man as he did while he was in the statesman's office. And instantly they both took hold of each other and they wrestled. And then Nolly stabbed him 3 times in the heart. Killed him instantly. Nolly reportedly calmly turned himself in while still holding the bloody knife. He pled self-defense, of course, right? And in 1880 was found not guilty. Nolly would go on to be elected the mayor of Austin in 1887. In fact, you can find his name still represented in the city on a plaque above the Paramount Theater. So next time you go to the Paramount, look up and you'll see that name up there. And a theater built by his son, and it was dedicated to him when it opened as the Majestic. Nice gentleman offering water, if you'd like it. Take a look at some of these beautiful gravestones. You'll notice lots of famous names here in the cemetery. And we'll be walking up on one of our ghosties that's a very renowned resident of Austin. Please come forward up here.
Good evening. I am Nancy Elizabeth Driskill, and I was married to a very famous man, Jesse Driskill. Now, the thing that makes Jesse so famous is that he built the Driskill Hotel. Anybody heard of the Driskill Hotel? Beautiful hotel. And it stands as a testament to who he is. I met Jesse up in Missouri. I had come up from Georgia. We fell in love and got married. And we decided that we were out for an adventure. We wanted to do something fun and interesting and different. Well, that we did. So we landed in San Antonio. Jesse was a merchant there. But being a merchant is kind of a boring thing if you're an adventurous like Jesse. So he decided, they left San Antonio and lived in a couple of small Texas towns right here in the area. Then Jesse went into the cattle business. The Civil War was on at that time. And Jesse sold cattle to the Confederate Army and to the Texas Rangers. He made a lot of money until the war ended. Then guess what happened to Jesse's money? War over, Civil War lost, the Confederates lost. He had wads of Confederate money. Bust. So that's what happened there. Then Jesse knew that the cattle business was very lucrative, and he began to take cattle up on trail rides up the Chisholm Trail to the northeast to sell them. He could buy cattle here in Texas for $4 to $10 a head. But if he got them all the way up to the northeast, he could sell them for $40. A lot of money. So Jesse had been up north, and he had been to New York, he had been to Chicago, and he had seen their fancy hotels. He decided that Austin deserved a really fancy hotel and that he was going to build it. So he went out looking for land down town and found a full block of land. That
Now they can see you.
Thank you, Dale.
A full block of land. It was very expensive. He paid $7,500 for it. So, the building began, and it went on for 2 years. It was completed, and it was the pride of Austin. There were so many fancy events that happened in Austin. Political events, soirees, weddings. It was the place to be, particularly if you had money, was to be there at the hotel. So Jesse kept right on with his cattle driving, and one unfortunate spring, Jesse did not know that there was going to be an early freeze, and he lost 3,000 head of cattle. They all froze to death. He was pretty heartbroken about that. And the sad thing about losing all those cattle was that he could now no longer make the payments for the Driskill Hotel. Fortunately, my brother, William Day, bought the hotel to help him out. And that gorgeous place is still in business. It's gone through several owners and several renovations, but to this day you can go in and get a meal there. You can get a drink. There's some bars there, and you can check and see if you smell cigars. Now, my Jesse loved fine whiskey, and he loved good cigars. Jesse, after losing the last head of cattle, died a heartbroken man. And I'm planning on going to see Jesse because I've outlasted him for 20 years now. I just want to say that if you go to the Driskill Hotel and you smell cigar smoke, that's Jesse coming to visit. So say hello to Jesse for me, and I'll see him soon. Good night.
Good night.
A quick little pause here. I'll tell you another little story about a sad case of drowning, as written in the Austin American Statesman, May 10th, 1882. On Tuesday, May 9th, 1882, the remains of Mr. Oliphant were consigned to this grave out here. Not exactly sure if we can see it, but it's out here. Trust me. And he was only here in the state for a short time before he drowned. 1 year prior, he left his happy home and friends in Bonnie, Scotland, hoping to regain his already failing health by coming to Texas, where it's nice and warm instead of that icky, misty, cold Scottish weather, right? He at once commenced sheep farming, and in less than 6 months was in the enjoyment of splendid health. But man proposes and God disposes. And where he regained his health, he found his grave. He received a letter from his mother in Scotland informing him that a young companion of his would arrive in Austin on or about the 6th of May. He at once started for Austin, but the water in Onion Creek, everyone knows about Onion Creek and how raging that can get, was so deep and rapid that he could not ford. So he waited until Sunday morning. Early on that morning, he attempted to cross on horseback, but was rapidly borne down rushing stream and was drowned. A companion of his tried to rescue him, but in vain. The young man he was to meet in Austin was sent out by his mother to buy his flock of sheep in order that he might return to home and to mother. How sad and heartrending to be such news, that devoted mother, who's for months been longing for the return of her son, restored to health again. He wasn't. Follow me.
I'm going to be telling the story of my late husband, Judge Charles Howard. It's not so easy being married to a man that history has already judged. I was born Mary Louisa Zimpelman, daughter of a German merchant family who believed in duty and progress. And when I married Charles, I thought I was marrying a man cut from the same cloth. Brave, disciplined, clever with his words and law. He fought for the Confederacy, yes, but he also believed in rebuilding, in bringing order to a land ruled by old promises and even older grudges. When we moved to El Paso, it was a wild corner of the world. The sun, dust, the endless wind of the desert. The Rio Grande shimmered like a ribbon of silver, and alongside lived people who had long shared its salt, its soil, and its burdens. This land must belong to the law, Charles said. But back then, after the war, law itself was fragile, more of a hope than a reality. See, the salt beds were white as snow and ruled by no one and everyone. The Mexican people of San Lazario called it sacred, communal even. Charles called it unclaimed, and the new Texas law agreed. So he filed the papers. Now to him, he said it was not about greed, but about bringing order, civility, enterprise to a place ruled by custom and sentiment. Yet Charles did not realize what he had touched. See, the Slenarios, they believed that the salt beds were their birthright, promised by the kings, guarded by their ancestors, blessed by the church. And when Charles said that they now had to start paying for something that they had always taken freely, it wasn't business, it was blasphemy. I can still remember the day that they took him home from prisoner being a San Lazario. He was thinner, his face gray, his voice hollow. He told me how they made him sign away his claim under duress, waving rifles, hundreds of them shouting in Spanish. He said he would never forget the humiliation. I begged him to leave it be, to let the desert have its salt and the people have their peace. But Charles was not a man to be shamed. He said that he would set things straight. When he shot Louis Cardi that October, I knew he had crossed a line that we could not come back from. See, Cardi was his ally, but now he was also an ally to the Slenarios. He spoke their tongue, understood them, and in the end, they avenged him as if they were one of their own. It still comes to me in fragments. The siege, the mob, the surrender. They took Charles from prison, shot him by firing squad, and then they chopped his body up and threw it in a well. I didn't believe it at first. I even lit a candle, waiting for him to come home one day, but the desert kept its dead, and he never did. See, when people think of the Salt War, they remember the blood and the politics. But I only remember a man, proud, wounded, blind by fury and rage. He died believing that he was right. And sometimes when the wind blows and I can taste the grit on my mouth, I think of him standing among the white flats and the red hills, and I wonder if the land has forgiven him. I do not know if I have.
All right, come follow me. This is a very narrow pathway, so be very careful. Oh, be careful with this ghost over here. Very tormented.
Damn you, McNeil! Damn you! I tangled with Sam Bass, only to be shot dead by the likes of you. Fallen fools. pardon the outburst, y'all. The name's Sergeant Edgar Maurice Bowie Moore, lawman, ranger, and gunslinger. I rest here as the very first Travis County deputy to be killed in the line of duty. You can call me Maurice, but that was too fancy for some folks, so they just called me Maurice. I was sired in New Orleans in 1850. I may hail from Louisiana, but if he's Texan, I reckon you've heard the name of my granduncle, Jim Bowie, defender of the Alamo. It was his brother, my maternal grandpa, who invented this here knife that I hold in my hand, and named after himself, the Bowie knife. I hear a limey singer 90 years after I died took the name for his own and made a career out of it. I moved to Texas as a young man, and in 1876, I rose all the way to first sergeant of the esteemed Texas Rangers. I was in Lieutenant B.E. Foster's regiment, and we fought many a good fight in the Lawless frontier of West Texas, until I became lieutenant myself. I took on vicious Apache braves, nefarious Mexican banditos, and scores of white outlaws, scoundrels and villains, seeking violence and riches. It was hard country for hard men, and sometimes it seemed like God himself turned a blind eye. In the summer of '78, outlaw, thief, and murderer Sam Bass and his gang were spotted at the Round Rock area. Williamson County Deputy Sheriff Grimes ran into him at a tobacco shop and demanded they surrender their sidearms. Bass dropped him on the spot. As the gang fled, mighty rangers surrounded him, and in a flurry of fire, the infamous outlaw was shot dead in his tracks. One of the finest moments of my career. But the violence and pace of the Texas Rangers took its toll on me. I became the deputy for the Travis County Sheriff. In Austin, a man could lay down his hat for a few days until the next spot of trouble. And one day, that trouble found me. Vandals torched the Ames schoolhouse, where my dear wife Belle worked as the schoolmarm. Belle later intercepted a confession from the McNeil brothers to the sheriff. Now, I knew these boys. I tangled with them in the past, and we'd exchanged many an unpleasantry. Scoundrels and lowlifes, just like their daddy. And I had it out for them. The note confessed to their fiery crime and demanded that they surrender to any member of the sheriff's department except for yours truly. Lest things get out of hand. Now, I took that as a threat and a challenge. Things was personal now. With them torching Belle's schoolhouse, I couldn't let that stand. So, me and Sheriff Platt mounted up and headed west into the mountain country. We camped overnight under a hill just out of sight of the McNeil house. At dawn, we rode up and knocked. Old man McNeil met us with his shotgun barrel. As the sheriff tried wrestling out of his hands, I drew my pistol and stepped around to peer in. Last thing I ever saw on this earth was that older McNeil's with a grin on his face. His wicked face. And a bright blast of his shotgun powder. I was dead before I even hit the ground. The sheriff's department paid their respects, but it wasn't until 2002 that they even bothered to give me a monument. How's that for respect for duty? Better late than never, I suppose. I can still see that bastard's grin! Damn you, McNeil! Damn you! I may wander here. You're burning in hell, boy. You and your whole family.
All right, we have one last story to tell before we end this story. Does everyone gather around for our final ghost?
Hello, everyone. My name is Peter J. Lawless. I was born in 1851 in Massachusetts, and I served 50 years in the International and Great Northern Railroad. Now, that railroad might be why I'm here in Texas, or why I was in Texas. And if you have ever heard my name, Lawless, maybe you've seen it. There is a street they named after me here in East Austin. And I did donate a small fortune to help start the Seton Free Infirmary. But when my wife passed away, I moved into the Driskill Hotel. And there I remain to this day. Now, if you've ever been to the Driskill, you know its beauty, and you might be inclined to know why it is that I never left. But a lot of things have changed in that time. Lots of rooms split up, lots of things added, many things taken away. But I am still there. And they say on the right night, on the 5th floor elevator, I can still be seen checking my watch, just making sure that things are on time. Now, they've been proud of the Driskill for many reasons, things I've loved, sky-lit dining rooms. Us boys, we had a pool hall, we had a barber shop, and of course, our bar. Now, one thing that we're all proud of are the 8 gold mirrors given to the Driskill by the Empress of Mexico herself. And those very mirrors reflect us, the past, and sometimes even me. Thank you, everyone.
All right, folks, this concludes our tour. As you can see, there are lots of renovations that happen here at the cemetery, and those are very, very costly to do. And we would encourage you to volunteer. We have cleanup days. We could always use donations, so if you're so inclined, you can go to the tent, and there's a coffin over there that you can put some money in. It might be kind of fun. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're so happy you came out, and enjoy the rest of your evening, and happy Halloween.
Thank you.